She doesn't know you exist, Marin. As far as Owen's family is concerned, I'm an only child. That's how it's going to stay. My sister said this to me on a Wednesday morning in April. She was standing in the kitchen of what had been our parents' house. Her house, in the way she had arranged things, holding a mug with both hands and looking at me with the particular expression of someone who has already decided how a conversation will end and is simply waiting for you to catch up. I had found out 3 days earlier, not from Delia. From a cousin named Roxanne who assumed I knew, who laughed, and said it was strange that the Kessler family didn't seem to know I was alive. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. My sister, my only sister, 4 years younger, the one I had driven to the emergency room twice and sat with through 3 different hard seasons of her life, had told the family of the man she was going to marry that I was dead. Gone 4 years ago. An accident. She had mentioned it once, let the grief settle over the room, and moved forward. She had built her new life on the other side of my death without telling me she'd assigned it to me. What I did not yet understand, that April morning in the kitchen, was what else she had built on the other side of it. Let me tell you what Vivienne Kessler's face looked like when she saw me walk through the doors of that reception hall on a November Saturday. And let me tell you what she already knew when it happened. My name is Marin Calloway. I am 34 years old. I am a licensed clinical social worker based in Athens, Georgia. I have spent 11 years working with families navigating crisis, custody disputes, sudden housing loss, the specific kind of upheaval that arrives without warning and requires someone in the room who can be still while everything else isn't. I tell you this not to establish credentials, but because the professional habit it built, observe first, conclude second, document always, matters more to this story than almost anything else. Delia is 4 years younger. We grew up in Decatur. Our father, Hugh Calloway, was a county civil engineer who spent 30 years with the same department, retired early with a pension and a paid-off house, and had the specific satisfaction of a man who had done exactly what he set out to do and knew it. Our mother, Eleanor, died when I was 17 and Delia was 13, breast cancer, 7 months from diagnosis. The kind of loss that doesn't settle cleanly, it just becomes the ground you stand on, whether or not it ever stops shifting. Delia and I were not estranged after that. We were not close in the way people imagine sisters to be. We were connected through the fact of our family, through our father, through the house, through the shared history of 2 people who had lost the same thing at formative ages and processed it differently. I moved to Athens for my graduate program at 24 and built a life there. Delia stayed closer to Decatur, worked in marketing, and eventually met Owen Kessler at a professional event when she was 27. The Kesslers were a certain kind of Atlanta family. Not flashy, they were not the kind of wealth that announces itself. They were the kind that has been in the same county for 3 generations and knows exactly which rooms they belong in. Vivienne Kessler, Owen's mother, sat on the board of 2 charitable foundations, had a name that appeared in the acknowledgement sections of galas she had not personally attended, and was, by all accounts, a woman of genuine warmth toward people she had decided to let in. Delia had decided she needed to be one of those people. I want to tell you about my father's estate because it is the other spine of this story, and you need to understand it before you can understand what Delia did. When my father retired, the house in Decatur had been paid off for 8 years. He had 3 investment accounts, nothing dramatic, the result of 30 years of consistent contributions and conservative choices. He had a savings account with a balance he had grown carefully since my mother's death. The house was appraised at $178,000 in the year before he died. The liquid assets totaled approximately $260,000 across everything. He was not a wealthy man. He was a prepared man, which he considered more important and which I have come to agree with. He died 26 months ago, sudden cardiac event on a Saturday morning. He was 68 years old and had been, as far as any of us knew, in reasonable health. The call came from his neighbor, who had found him. I drove from Athens to Decatur in just under 2 hours and sat in the hospital parking lot for a while before I could go inside. His will was simple and explicit. Everything divided equally between his 2 daughters. 50% to Marin Elizabeth Calloway, 50% to Delia and Calloway. That is what the will said. What happened after the will is a different story entirely. I need to tell you how I found out, and I want to be precise about it because the sequence matters. Roxanne is a cousin, our father's sister's daughter, Atlanta adjacent, loosely in contact with Delia over the years. She had attended a charity preview event in October and had run into Owen and Delia. She had spoken briefly with Vivienne Kessler, who had expressed condolences about Delia's sister. Vivienne had said, "It must be so hard losing your sister and then your father so close together. Delia carries a great deal." Roxanne had laughed because she had seen me at our father's funeral. Because she had spoken to me at Christmas the year before, because there was no world in which I was dead, she said, "I'm sorry, Marin." "She's not." And Delia had put a hand on Roxanne's arm. "This is the part that tells you everything about my sister," and said, very calmly, without missing a beat, "Roxanne and I haven't been in close contact. Some of our family history gets confused." She moved Vivienne away before Roxanne could finish the sentence. Roxanne called me the following morning. She said, "I think Delia has been telling these people you're dead." I did not speak for a moment. "How long?" I asked. "At least 2 years." The mother said it like it was just established, something everyone already knew. I spent 3 days with that information before I moved. This is what I do. I take the time to understand what I am actually looking at before I decide what to do about it. It is a professional habit that has occasionally cost me speed and has never cost me accuracy. Then I drove to Decatur. Delia was still living in our father's house. We had agreed to this arrangement temporarily. She would stay through the estate settlement process, which had been described to me, in every conversation we'd had about it, as still in progress. There had always been a reason for the delay, a document pending. A filing backlog at the probate court. The estate attorney's caseload. I had accepted these explanations because I trusted the process and because I was working full-time and managing my own life and because I did not have a specific reason not to believe my sister. I knocked on the door. She answered like she had been expecting me. She probably had. Roxanne is not subtle and Delia is not slow. I did not raise my voice. I asked her once, standing in the doorway, "What have you told the Kessler family about me?" She stepped back, she went to the kitchen, she put on coffee. She sat down across from me and she waited, and I recognized this. It was what Delia always did when she had decided to tell you a version of the truth she had spent time preparing. She told me she had told Owen's family that her sister had died 4 years ago. An accident. She had not specified the kind because she had not wanted to elaborate and she had not needed to. She had cried when she told Owen, she said. It had felt true enough in the moment. "Why?" I said. She said it simply. She had wanted to start her life with the Kesslers without complications. Without a sister who worked with difficult families and made every gathering feel heavy. Without someone who might say something wrong at a dinner party or ask questions that didn't fit the room. "They are a certain kind of family," she said, "and you are a certain kind of person. The two things don't work together." I looked at the kitchen table, the one our father had found at an estate sale in 2004 and refinished himself over a weekend. I had been 12. Delia had been 8. We had both sat on the porch asking how long it would take. I asked her about the estate. Something shifted in her face. Not much. Delia has excellent composure. But I have spent 11 years reading the faces of people who are telling me things that are adjacent to the truth and not quite touching it. She said the estate was nearly settled. That there had been complications with one of the investment accounts. That the attorney was finalizing the distribution now. I asked for the attorney's name. She gave it to me. She could not refuse. I was a named beneficiary in a written will, and I had every legal right to contact the estate attorney directly. Refusing would have told me more than the name did. I left without touching the coffee. I called the estate attorney's office the next morning. The attorney's name was Douglas Farr. His paralegal answered and confirmed the estate of Hugh Calloway had been settled. Closed, in fact. 14 months ago, I asked who had received the distribution. She paused. Then she said I would need to speak directly with Mr. Farr. I called back that afternoon. Douglas Farr came to the phone. He told me, in the careful tone of a man who is realizing mid-conversation that he may have a problem on his hands, that the estate had been closed 14 months prior with Delia Ann Calloway as sole heir. On the basis of a notarized statement filed with the probate court, a statement indicating that Maren Elizabeth Calloway had predeceased her father. I had not predeceased my father. I had held his hand at the hospital 2 days before he died. I had delivered a eulogy at his funeral. I had signed his death certificate as next of kin. I am a social worker. I have sat with people in the worst moments of their lives and held steady. It is what I do. I sat in my car outside my office and I was not steady for a while. Then I called an attorney. Her name was Patricia Osa. Estate and probate, 12 years of practice. An office near the Athens courthouse that smelled like coffee and organized paperwork. She reviewed the documents I brought, the will, the probate filing, a copy of the fraudulent death statement I had obtained through a records request. And when she looked up, her expression had the particular focus of a person who has located the exact shape of a problem. "The notary stamp," she said, "give me a week." The notary stamp did not match any registered notary in the state of Georgia for the date on the document. Patricia found this in 4 days. "The filing is fraudulent," she said. "The estate was closed on a forged instrument. We can petition to reopen it." She also found the Kessler connection. During the 14 months the estate had been technically closed and the assets technically Delia's, a trust arrangement had been established through an attorney in Atlanta, a family acquaintance of the Kesslers. The trust had been structured around Delia's estate as the sole surviving heir of Hugh Calloway. It had been established with Vivienne Kessler's involvement, not as a trustee, but as the person who had connected Delia to the attorney, who had provided a character reference, and who had, separately, written Delia a personal check for $120,000. A gift to her future daughter-in-law, a woman Vivienne had been told was navigating the loss of both parents and a sister alone, a woman who, as far as Vivienne knew, had no one. I sat with that number for a while. My sister had been given $120,000 by a woman who believed she was a grieving only child, because I was dead. Patricia said, "The trust documents contain representations Delia made in writing about her estate's status. If Vivienne Kessler was present for any of those representations, she is a potential witness. She may also not know the full picture of what she helped facilitate." I thought about that, then I asked Patricia when Delia's wedding was. "Why?" "I think Vivienne Kessler needs to see me," I said. Patricia looked at me for a moment. "That is not something I'm going to advise," she said, "and I notice you're not asking me to advise it." "Correct," I said. "The wedding was on a Saturday in November." I had been on Delia's original guest list. Family is family until you decide it isn't, and my name had never been formally removed, only forgotten, because Delia had assumed I would not know there was a wedding to attend. I drove to the venue. I wore a gray dress. I gave my name at the door. They checked the list. Maren Calloway, present and accounted for, they let me in. The reception was already underway when I arrived. High ceilings, white floral arrangements on every surface. The warm hum of 200 people and a string quartet playing something that floated above the conversation without interrupting it. I stood at the entrance to the main hall and let my eyes adjust. I found Vivienne Kessler before I found Delia. She was standing near the head table, speaking to a couple I didn't recognize, relaxed, at ease, the specific ease of a person who has attended events like this so many times that her body has learned to be at rest in them. She was in her early 60s. Silver-haired, a dark blue dress. Pearl earrings, the kind of woman whose composure is not performance, it's simply the result of decades of inhabiting herself completely. She looked toward the door. This is what people do when the light changes. It is automatic. She was not looking for me. She had no reason to look for me. But she looked toward the door, and she saw me standing there, and I watched her face do something I have only seen a handful of times in 11 years of clinical work. It was not surprise. Surprise is fast and shallow. This was something deeper, the specific expression of a person encountering a fact that instantly and completely reorganizes what they believe to be true. The look of a woman who is very rapidly recalculating something important. She excused herself from the couple mid-sentence. She walked directly toward me. She stopped 2 feet away. She looked at my face the way someone looks at a photograph they are trying to match to a memory. Then she said, very quietly, "You're Marin." It wasn't a question. "Yes," I said. She looked at me for 2 more seconds. Then she touched my arm lightly and said, "Come with me, right now, please." Before I tell you what Vivienne said in that room, I want to stop for just a moment, because this is the part of the story that keeps turning over in my mind, not the fraud, not the paperwork. The moment someone looks at you and realizes they have been given a completely false picture of who you are, and they choose, in real time, to find out the truth. Drop a comment right now and tell me, has anyone ever told a significant lie about you to people who mattered? Not a small one, a real one. One that shaped how others saw you, treated you, or made decisions about you. What happened when the truth came out? I read every comment. Drop it now, I'll be here. The room she took me to was a small parlor off the main corridor, the kind wedding venues keep for exactly this kind of moment, when someone needs 4 walls around them and a door that closes. She shut the door. She did not sit. She looked at me with the expression of a person who has been told a long story and just found out the ending was wrong. She said, "Delia told us you died in a car accident 3 years ago. She told Owen first, then us." She cried. She showed us a photograph, you and her as children. She said she kept it because it was the only one she had left. I did not say anything. She told me she was managing her father's estate alone, that she was the sole heir and that the process was taking time and she was doing it without any family to help her. She said you had been close before the accident and that losing you, and then losing her father. Vivienne stopped. She said it had left her entirely alone in the world. I let that sit in the room for a moment. I introduced her to our family's estate attorney, Vivienne continued, as a favor. Because Owen loves her and because I wanted to help. She used that referral to establish a trust. The trust is structured around her estate as sole heir of her father's assets. The attorney who prepared it has documents in which she represented, in writing, that she was the only surviving child. She looked at me directly, and I wrote her a personal check for $120,000 in January of last year, because I believed she was a young woman who had lost everyone and was carrying it alone. She said it without breaking eye contact. There was no self-pity in it, just the clear accounting of a person who is willing to say the exact cost of being deceived. "Tell me what has actually happened," she said. I told her. I told her about the will, equal distribution, both daughters named. I told her about calling Douglas Farr and what he'd told me. I told her about the fraudulent notary stamp and Patricia Osai and the petition to reopen the estate. I told her that the estate had been closed on a forged document that declared me dead before my father. I told her that I had attended my father's funeral, that I had delivered the eulogy, that there were photographs. Vivienne listened without interrupting. She had the stillness of someone absorbing a thing she will have to act on, not passive stillness, active stillness. The kind that means she was already deciding. When I finished, she was quiet for perhaps 5 seconds. "The trust documents," she said. The representations Delia made to the attorney, about her estate status, about being the only surviving heir. Those are in writing. I have copies. "My attorney would need those," I said. "You'll have them Monday." She said it the way people say things they have already decided. "The check, the $120,000, that is a civil matter. If the representation was fraudulent, I have grounds to recover it." She paused. "My name and my family's attorney's name are attached to a trust built on a false foundation. I need you to understand that I did not know. That I would not have." She stopped. "I know," I said. She looked at me for a long moment. "You deserved your father's estate," she said quietly. "You deserved to be known, to have your name said correctly in rooms you had every right to be in. I am a clinical social worker. I have trained for many years to receive difficult information with steadiness and to give it the same way. I have sat across from people in the worst moments of their lives and not looked away. I did not cry in that room. I made the same decision I always make when emotion has the authority to undo what I still need to do. I would feel it later. Alone, in the car, or at home, or somewhere that didn't require me to be functional afterward. "Thank you," I said, "for the documents. And for this." She straightened. "I'll handle Delia," she said. "You don't have to do that part," I said. "I know," she said, "but I will." She opened the door. Vivienne Kessler walked back into the reception. I watched her cross the room toward the head table with the particular purposefulness of a woman who has just made a decision and is going to see it through. I left before the speeches. Vivienne sent the documents to Patricia on Monday. All of it, the trust paperwork, the written representations Delia had made about her sole heirship, the correspondence between Delia and the estate attorney, 2 years of email documentation. Patricia filed the motion to reopen the estate that Wednesday. The fraudulent death statement was submitted to the probate court for review. The notary investigation, which Patricia had already begun, confirmed within the month that the stamp belonged to a notary whose license had been suspended in a separate county for an unrelated matter, and who had almost certainly stamped the document without properly witnessing the signature. The document was declared void. The estate of Hugh Calloway was reopened. The full asset reconstruction took 8 weeks. The house in Decatur had been sold. Delia had listed it 11 months after the estate closed and moved into a new apartment. But the sale proceeds were traceable and formed part of the estate asset pool. The investment accounts had been partially liquidated, the remainder still held in Delia's name. Total estate value recovered, $406,000. My share, after legal fees and estate costs, $164,000. The trust Vivienne had helped establish was dissolved once the fraudulent foundation was confirmed. The civil action for recovery of the personal gift was filed separately. Delia's restitution included repayment of the $120,000 to the Kessler family, structured over a defined period. The criminal complaint was filed by Patricia's office with the Fulton County District Attorney. Delia was charged with estate fraud, filing a fraudulent legal instrument, and fraudulent misrepresentation in connection with the trust arrangement. She retained a private attorney. The charges were resolved through a plea agreement, felony reduction to misdemeanor fraud, 3 years of supervised probation, full restitution, and a formal record of the fraudulent filing. Owen filed for divorce in April. They had been married 5 months. I don't know what Delia told him about any of it. I don't know if she tried to construct a version that placed her in tolerable light. She has always been skilled at that. I don't know if she believed, by the end, that what she had done had been a kind of protection rather than a theft. Some people are able to do that with the things they have chosen. They reassemble the story until the architecture holds. What I know is what my father wrote in his will on a quiet afternoon before he died, when he was still himself completely. Precise, deliberate, the man who refinished furniture and measured load weights and planned for his retirement 2 decades in advance. He wrote both our names. He knew exactly what he was leaving and exactly who he was leaving it to. It just took his older daughter, a suspended notary stamp, and a woman in a dark blue dress who happened to look toward the door to make sure it arrived where he intended. I'll say this briefly. My sister needed me to be dead because living people have legal standing. Living people can contact estate attorneys and request documentation and walk through reception hall doors on a Saturday night in November. Living people are inconvenient to a plan that depends on their absence. She had calculated that I was far enough away and trusting enough to remove from the story without consequence. She was wrong about the last part. If you are a named beneficiary in a will, your parents, a relative's, anyone's, know that you have the right to contact the estate attorney directly. You do not need the permission of a co-beneficiary to ask what is happening. You are entitled to a full accounting. Request it in writing. Keep a record of the request. Know that fraudulent filings in probate court are a crime. Know that a void document cannot legally authorize anything, not an estate closure, not a trust arrangement, not a distribution. Know that the people who help facilitate those arrangements in good faith often become the most important witnesses once the truth surfaces. And know that grief is not a license. That loss, even real loss, even genuine loss, does not give anyone the right to take what was built for someone else. My father prepared carefully so that both of his daughters would have something from the life he spent building. Both. That was the document. That was always what it said. If this story stayed with you, hit the like button and subscribe. It helps more people find these stories. And I asked you in the middle, has someone ever told a significant lie about you that shaped how others saw you? What happened when the truth came out? Tell me in the comments. I'm reading every single one. Until next time, take care of yourself. Know what your name is on, and show up to the room you have every right to be in.